students. This is your another online lecture of the development economics. As we have covered the previous lecture, theories of economic growth and development, and I received the feedback of many students. Obviously, online lecture classes and live classes have some difference. So, if you find any query or questions, you can ask from me via email or through Google Classroom or through even WhatsApp. Um, Obviously, there will be some difference, and you can go through the slides also, you can go through the videos also, and you can get the information from Ministry of Finance. Obviously, um, I was giving you the some articles from Economic Survey of Pakistan. Now, this is the online lecture, and I will give you the link of Ministry of Finance and Economic Survey of Pakistan, and you can find some points or some chapters also related to Pakistan economy. Obviously, this was the little bit interesting when we solved the case studies in classrooms, but here it is online, so you have to indulge with the teacher through the online, through the questioning also, and you can email me also that you are getting a difficulty in this topic, or you are getting a difficulty in specific topic, or specific you are finding any difficulty in numerical or any concept. You can ask from me. This is another chapter I'm going to explain, which is about the poverty, inequality, and development. We have gone through the first three chapters, and first two chapters that were basic, and actually we were making the base about the economic growth, and how our economy that is different from other nations. We have characterized, or we have differentiated the rich and poor nations also, and we have gone through the economic growths of the different nations. We have compared the development of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. We have also calculated the Human Development Index. There was also the interesting thing in our classes. Um, so here the next chapter, that is also quite interesting. Uh, that is poverty, inequality, and development. So this is your chapter number 5 of Tudaro and Smith. According to Adam Smith, he says that no society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which by far the greater part of the numbers are poor and miserable. And according to Mehbubul Haq, who has also described the Human Development Index concept, he said that every nation must keep in mind about the poverty of the people first and economic growth on the second point. It means you must think about how many people are poorer in the society. Then you can go through about the economic growth. The economy cannot be good in your GDP growth when the large number of the people are poor, or the large number of the people they are living below the poverty line. And here, the International Food Policy Research Institute is, according to their report, the coincidence of severe and persistent poverty and hunger indicates the presence of poverty traps, conditions from which individuals or groups cannot emerge without the help of others. It means to get rid from the poverty line, or from vicious circle of poverty, we need some assistance, and we get assistance from many other nations, and obviously this is the work at the governmental level, not the individual task also. So here also the definition has given by the World Bank 2013, that the World Bank has adopted two new goals and end the extreme poverty by 2030 and boost shared prosperity by maximizing income growth for the poorest 40% in every country. It means their first goal is end extreme poverty first of all, and then you can think about how to increase the income growth. Uh, Now I'm telling you about the situation of Pakistan. That if you go through the condition of Pakistan, so according to World Bank, they said that the poverty in Pakistan fell from 64.3% to 29.5% in 2014. So this data is about 2014. Now the situation has been worsened, and that is different from now. And you can see here that poverty head count ratio at $1.90 a day, that is poverty line, and according to them, the 6.1% in 2013 to 3.9% in 2015, the Pakistan has made substantial progress in reducing poverty, giving it the second lowest headcount poverty rate in South Asia. But if you see the condition now in PTI government, you can see that 18 million more people may slip into abject poverty due to low economic growth and double-digit food inflation. This is according to Dr. Hafiz Pasha. He is the renowned economist, and he said into the report that in this government, in the 2 years of the in these 2 years of the era of the 2 years period of the Tehreek Insaf PTI, there is doubt that so many people, means 18 million people, will slip into the poverty line, or they will slip into the poverty. And national poverty ratio, which was 31.3% in June 2018, would sharply jump to over 40% by June 2020. So this is very depressing thing now. Whenever you see in absolute terms, so people living in poverty will increase from 69 million in June 2018 to 87 million by June 2020, indicating 26% increase in poverty, or an addition of 18 million people in first 2 years of the PTI government. So this is very alarming situation for Pakistan, obviously. And according to Hafiz A. Pasha, he said that 8 million people have already been added to the ranks of the poor by the end of the first year of the PTI government. He has projected that 10 million more people will slip below the poverty line by the end of the current fiscal year. He argued that in 2019 to 2020, the GDP growth rate is expected to be close to 2.4%, that is, recently it is 3.5%. Therefore, there will be no increase in per capita income. Obviously, when so many people are living below the poverty line, there is more poverty and more unemployment. Obviously, there will be less economic growth. I have gone through the current situation of the Pakistan, and obviously in chapters previous chapters 1 and 2, they introduced the problems that despite the significant improvement over the past half century, extreme poverty remains widespread in the developing nations. In 2010, more than 1.2 billion people lived on less than $1.25 per day at 2005 US purchasing power parity. And the development requires a higher gross national income and hence sustained growth. That is clear. The basic issue, however, is not only how to make GNI grow, but also who would make it grow. This is the main question. The few or the many? If it were the rich, it would most likely be appropriated by them, and progress against poverty would be slow and inequality would worsen. But if it were generated by many, they would be its principal beneficiaries and the fruits of economic growth would be shared more evenly. Thus, many in developing countries that had experienced relatively high rates of economic growth by historical standards discovered that such growth often brought little in the way of significant benefits. Because the elimination of widespread poverty and high and even growing income inequality are at the core of all development problems and in fact define for many people the principal objectives of development policy. We begin by focusing of the poverty and inequality problem in developing nations. So although our main focus is on the economic poverty and inequality in the distribution of incomes and assets, it is important to keep in mind that this is only part of broader inequality problem in the developing nation. After introducing the appropriate measures of inequality and poverty, we define the nature of the poverty and income distribution problem and consider its quantitative significance in various developing nations. In this chapter, therefore, we will examine the following critical questions about the relationship among economic growth, income distribution, and poverty. We will go through these all the questions one by one. First of all, obviously, we see how can we best measure inequality and poverty, and then we will determine what is extent of the relative inequality in developing nations, likewise the Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. And how is this related to the extent of absolute poverty? Who are the poor and what are their economic characteristics? What are the policy implications? What policies should be used to reduce the vicious circle of poverty? So, these are actually the contents of the chapter that we'll be going through here. Obviously, our topic of interest is about poverty and inequality, and both are related. It means the poor are more poorer and rich people are more richer. It means it leads to the inequality also. And economists distinguish between two principal measures of income distribution for both analytical and quantitative purposes. First of all, we will discuss about the personal or size distribution of income is used to measure the inequality of the nation, and second, the functional or distributive factor share distribution of income. There are two methods. There are a lot of methods that how can we measure the inequality, but this is the first that how you measure the inequality. First of all, if you talk about the size distribution of the income, so the distribution of income, it means it other sources such as interest, profit, rents, gifts, or simply deals with individual persons or households and the total income they receive. The distribution of income according to size, class of persons, for example, the share of total income accruing to the poorest specific percentage or the richest specific percentage of the population without regard to the sources of the income. It means it doesn't matter from which source they are getting the income, okay? But you are differentiating the income of the poor and the income of the rich person, and you are ignoring these all conditions. You are ignoring the way the which they receive that income. That is not considered actually, whether the income that is coming from employment, whether that income coming from inheritance or from any way, that source doesn't matter at all, and only you are um specifying the people who are, how many percentage of the people they are rich and how many percentage of the people they are poor. It is actually why this is called the size distribution of income, because you see that we see the inequality according to size class of the persons. It means the share of total income, I have explained this, accruing to the poorest specific percentage or the richest specific percentage of the population, without regard to the source of that income, like interest, profits, rent, gift, or inheritance. You can go through this video for understanding the concept of poverty here.
Because I was too tired seeing the most horrible things on TV and not feel I could do.
Contrary to what a lot of people mistakenly believe, poverty and inequality are not the same thing. Simply put, poverty describes a situation where a person doesn't have enough money to meet his basic needs, with the two main poverty types being: 1. Absolute poverty, where we set a certain income level and say that those who earn less are considered poor no matter where they live. The World Bank has such a poverty limit, which was last updated back in October of 2015 and currently lies at $1.90 per day. 2. Relative poverty, which is location dependent and basically describes a state of not being able to afford your basic needs when it comes to your location. For example, someone earning $5 per day might afford the basics, including a place to live, in many African countries, but not in Germany. So the relative poverty threshold is higher in Germany. In contrast, economic inequality refers to income, wealth, or anything else that is distributed unevenly. As an ultra-simplified example, we'll assume country A has 100,000 citizens, with 50,000 earning $1 per day and the other 50,000 earning $2 daily. In other words, 50% of country A's citizens live below the World Bank's poverty limit. What if next year something positive happens and the $1 per day citizens earn $2, whereas the $2 per day ones earn $10? As strange as it may seem, the two indicators tell the story in different ways because: 1. Poverty has been completely eliminated now that everyone earns $2 daily or more, but 2. The income of half the citizens doubled, whereas for the other half, it's now 5 times higher. Therefore, there's currently more inequality than before, despite everyone making more money. Simple enough?
Poverty and inequality are obviously, these are related with each other. Now we are going through the concept of inequality, and first of all we are discussing about the size distribution. And for the size distribution, we are going to use the method of quintiles and decile. Actually, um, first of all, I will tell you about the quintiles, that is actually called the fifths, or deciles. These are called tenths according to ascending income orders. These are determining what proportion of the total national income is received. So from this table you can easily see that this is showing the quintiles and deciles. Actually, economists and statisticians therefore like to arrange all individuals by ascending personal income and then divide the total population into distinct groups or sizes. And a common method is to divide the population into successive quintiles or deciles according to ascending income levels, and then determine what proportion of the total income is received by each income group. For example, this table shows a hypothetical but fairly typical distribution of income for developing nations. In this table, 20 individuals showing the entire population of the country. You can see from here, from 1 to 20, 20 individuals. They are showing the entire population of the country and arranged in order of ascending annual personal income, ranging from the individual with the lowest income which is you can see from here 0.8, that is showing the lowest, with the highest 15 units. The total or national income of all individuals amount to 100 units and is the sum of all entries in column 2. You can see in all entries, if you will add these all entries, you will get 100. In column 3, you can see that these are showing the quintiles, and if here 4, they are showing the deciles. In column 3, the population is grouped into quintiles of 4 individuals each. You must keep in mind that these quintiles, these are divided into 5 groups. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5, 9, 13, 22, and 51. These are showing the 5 groups, and deciles are showing the 10 groups. But here you will add 4 values, and uh, in front of the fourth value you will write down the value you have added from 0.8 to 1.8. So here you can see in column 3 the population is grouped into quintiles of 4 individuals each. The first quintile, now you will see the first quintile. This is showing actually the first quintile, second, third, fourth, and fifth quintiles. Each quintiles, these are containing the 4 groups or 4 individuals here. And first of all, you are watching here, the first quintile shows the bottom 20% of the population on the income scales. So this is actually the first quintile. This is showing the bottom 20% of the income, or bottom 20% of the population of the income scales. This group receives only 5%, only 5% of the total income. If you will consider here, from you will add from 0.8 to 1.8, you will get the value of first quintile, and people are getting only 5% of the income. And if you will see here the second quintile, that is individual 5 through 8, and here they receives 9% of the total income. Here you can easily see if they are top 20, they are showing the in the first group they're showing the bottom 20% of the people, bottom 20% of the people who are considering the poorest people. Okay, poorest 20% of the population, they are getting the 5%. And second quintile, they are showing 9. If you will go through from here 1.8 until 2.7, you will get here 9. And alternatively, the bottom 20% of the population is receiving only 14% of the income. It means if you will add these 20% and these 20%, and you will get 5 plus 9 is 14. So it means the bottom 40% of the people, they are getting 14% of the income, while the top 20%. Now you will see here the top 20%. Okay, you will start from here. These are showing the top 20% of the population. These are receiving 51% of the total income. Okay, now you can see here, this is showing the bottom 20% of the people, and this is showing the top 20% of the people, they are getting 51% of the income, and bottom 21% of the people, they are getting 5% of the income. And if you will add this, you will see the cumulative phenomena of these. You can see the 40% of the of the population, they are getting um, bottom 20% of the population getting 14% of the income, and top 20% of the people, they are getting 50% of the income. So a common measure of income inequality that can be derived from column 3 is the ratio of incomes received by the top 20% and bottom 40% of the population. This ratio, sometimes called a Kuznets ratio after Nobel laureate Simon Kuznets, has often been used a measure of degree of inequality between high and low income group in a country. In our example, this inequality ratio is equal to 51 divided by 14. This is a 51 divided by 14. 9 plus 5, you will get 14. That is approximately 3.64. To provide a more detailed breakdown of the size distribution of income decile, that is 10% shares are listed in column 4. We see, for example, that the bottom 10%, now you will start from the bottom 10% here, from bottom 10%, okay? The bottom 10% of the population, the two poorest individuals, receives only 1.8 of the total income. In this case, you will add two individuals each and you will get the values 0.8 plus 1 and you will get 1.8. It means you are dividing the individuals into 10 groups and you will add the personal income of two individuals in each case and you will get the income in case of deciles. So here, for example, that the bottom 10% of the population receiving only 1.8% of the total income, while the top receive 28.5. So here you are getting about the 10%, and here quintiles you are describing about the 20% of the population. So here the deciles, they are getting the top 10% are getting 28.5%, and bottom 10% they are getting 1.8% of the total income. Finally, if we wanted to know what the top 5% receive, we would actually divide the total population into 20 equal groups of individuals. This would simply be each of the 20 individuals and calculate the percentage of the total income received by group. We see the top 5% of the population. If you see the top 5%, obviously that will be the different phenomena in this case. So now you can only observe the case of quintiles and deciles, as you have seen that quintiles this is about fifths and deciles about this is explaining the tenths. Okay, this is the important things, and from this you can also define uh, in quintiles are 20% proportion of any numerical quantity. Okay, quintiles, it is about 20% of the numerical quantity. And in case of deciles, this is showing the 10% proportion of any numerical quantity. And population, this is divided into 10 groups and this is divided into 5 groups. So actually, this is about the relative income share. It means the ratio of the highest 20% to the lowest 40% of the population. The higher the ratio, the greater the income inequality. Uh, Next, how could you measure the inequality? This is the concept is Lorentz curve of the income distribution. This is very important. As you can determine, you can use so many methods for measuring the poverty. You can even measure the poverty ratio of the Pakistan or any nation by using the Lorentz curve, by using the functional or personal distribution of income, by using the Kuznets ratio, by using the Gini coefficient. So there are so many methods. Now I am going through the method of Lorentz curve of the income distribution. So actually, I will show you this through the graph, and that graph that will discuss the quintile percentage of the population versus cumulative um, percentage of the income received. And after explaining all the Lorentz curve, if that will be the closer the Lorentz curve to the line of equality, the better is the size distribution of the income we will discuss here. So here I'm going to explain. So this Simon-Kuznets ratio, we have explained the income inequality, that was about the percentage distribution of income, and this is the common measure of inequality, and this is about 20% of the top population and 40% of the bottom, and this is about the high and low income countries. That is about the Kuznets ratio. Simon Kuznets has also explained that about the personal distribution of income, as we have discussed here. So now we are discussing the concept of the Lorentz curve. This is showing the variance of the size distribution of income from perfect equality. So this is another common way to analyze the personal income statistics is to construct what is now known as the Lorentz curve. So this figure shows how it is done. The number of income recipients are plotted on the horizontal axis, not in absolute terms but in cumulative percentage. You can see here these are cumulative percentage, okay? And for example, at point 20, you can see from here, at point 20, we have the lowest, poorest 20% of the population, and at point 60 we have the bottom 60%, and at the end of the axis all 100% of the population has been accounted for. The vertical axis shows the share of total income received by each percentage of the population. It is also cumulative up to 100%, meaning that both axes are the same length. This entire figure is enclosed in square and a diagonal line is drawn. This diagonal line, the straight 45-degree diagonal line that is drawn from the lower left corner of square to the upper right corner. At every point on the diagonal, every point on the diagonal, the percentage of the income received is exactly equal to the percentage of income recipients. It means 10% of the people are getting 10%, 20% of the people are getting 20%, 30% of the people are getting 30% of income, and so on. So, after matching all the points, you will get this diagonal line. For example, the point halfway along the length of the diagonal shows this is the 50% halfway. For example, this halfway 50% of the income being distributed to exactly 50% of the people. For example, you're seeing that 50% of the income is distributed among the 50%, and at the three-quarter point on the diagonal, three-quarter means you are discussing about the 75% of the income is distributed among the 75% of the population. In other words, the diagonal line, this diagonal line is showing the line of equality, or it is showing the perfect equality in size distribution of income. It means each percentage group of income recipient is receiving the equal level of income. They are receiving the same level of or same percentage of total income. For example, the bottom 40% receives 40% of the income, while the top 5% you can get from here, top 5%, they are getting the 5% of the total income. So this Lorentz curve actually shows the actual quantitative relationship between the percentage of income recipient and percentage of income, means who are getting the income and how many income is distributed among them. Um, so in this figure we have plotted this Lorentz curve using the decile data, as we have divided into the 10 groups. You can see from here. So we have divided into decile data here, and we have plotted this Lorentz curve in decile data. In other words, we have divided both the horizontal and vertical axis into 10 equal segments, corresponds to each of 10 decile groups. So here at point A shows the bottom 10% of the population receives 1.8% of the total income. Point B shows that the bottom 20%, this point B, you are talking about this point B. This point B shows is receiving 5% of the total income, and so for each of the other eight cumulative decile groups. Note that at the halfway point means you are talking about 50% of the population is in fact receiving only 19.8% of the income. 50% these are getting the 19.8% of the population. It means the poor people they are getting lower level of income and the rich people they are getting higher level of income. That's why we have made this Lorentz curve. After joining the points, this is showing the income inequality. The more the Lorentz curve line away from the diagonal, if this line, this is more away from the, if this Lorentz curve, this is Lorentz curve actually, away from the line of equality or line, the perfect equality line, the greater the degree of inequality represented. So the extreme case of perfect inequality, this is a situation in which one person receives all of the national income while everybody else receives nothing, would be shown by the congruence of the Lorentz curve. Means one person is receiving all of the income and others are not getting the income. It means this is showing with the bottom horizontal and right hand vertical axis. It means you are getting this line, this Lorentz curve will shift here. Means only one person is receiving that income because no one country exhibits either perfect equality or perfect inequality in this distribution of income. The Lorentz curve for different countries will lie somewhere to the right of the diagonal curve. It means here you can see if the Lorentz curve, this is near to the line of equality. It means this is showing the less income inequality, and if it is the greater or if it is far from the line of equality, so it is showing the more income inequality. You can make the Lorentz curve in case of your nation, and you can see either you are near to this line or you are farther away from this line also. Obviously, the greater the curvature of the Lorentz curve, the greater is the degree of income inequality here. So you can see from this diagram here that no country, the Lorentz curve will not on the perfect equality line, and this Lorentz curve will not touch to this axis, means not on the congruence of the curve, means not on the corners. It means if it will touch here, it means there will be the perfect inequality, and if this line will touch to the line of equality, there will be perfect equality. Okay, so it means in other words, these two will be considered as the extreme cases. Next, that is the Gini coefficient and aggregate measure of inequality. Obviously, this Gini coefficient concept that will be related with the Lorentz curve, actually. And first of all, the idea behind the Gini coefficient that will lie between the 0 and 1, that will be the more important, and there are some Gini coefficients are given, that is 0.41 for US, 0.30 for Ethiopia, and 0.57 for Brazil. And Gini coefficient is higher for the OPEC and middle income countries than low income nations. And they have given the different Gini coefficient values on the about low income countries and middle income countries. But first of all, how could you calculate the Gini coefficient? This is the big debate here. Um, the Gini coefficient is actually an aggregate numerical measure of income inequality ranging from 0 to 1. It means 0 shows perfect equality and 1 shows this is a line between 0 and 1, and 0 shows here the perfect equality and 1 shows perfect inequality, and it is measured graphically by dividing the area between the perfect equality line and the Lorentz curve. Okay, so the area between the perfect equality and Lorentz curve, this is showing the Gini coefficient. The higher the value of the coefficient is, the higher the inequality of income distribution. The lower it is, the more equal the distribution of the income. If the value of Gini coefficient this is low, okay, so it means there will be less inequality. The higher the and if the higher the value of coefficient is, the higher the inequality of the income distribution. And if the value is low, it means this is 0.41, 0.30. If it is low, it means there will be the equal, more equal the distribution of income. So a final and very convenient shorthand summary measures of the relative degree of income inequality in a country can be obtained by calculating the ratio of the area between the diagonal and the Lorentz curve divided by total area of the half square in which the curves lies. So in this figure you can see here, this is the ratio of the shaded area A, that is divided by or to the total area of the triangle. You can here see this is the triangular area, total area of the BCD. The ratio is known as the Gini concentration ratio or Gini coefficient, named after the Italian statistician who first formulated it in 20th century. So Gini coefficients are actually aggregate inequality measures and can vary anywhere from 0 to 1. In fact, as you will soon discover, the Gini coefficient for countries with highly unequal income distribution typically lies between 0.50 to 0.75. It means if they are highly unequal, it means you can see here the Gini coefficient value will be higher. You can see the value of Gini coefficient in case of Pakistan, whether they are uh, showing the high inequality or low inequality, and the countries which are showing the equal distribution of income, it is in order they're showing the Gini coefficient value from 0.20 to 0.35. Four possible Lorentz curves such as might be found in international data, and obviously they have shown the different Gini coefficient, and they have shown the different values. If you are showing the these are the less developed countries or low income countries and middle income countries and the OPEC. You can see here the large income inequality here. The income is unequal in these nations, and if you are middle income nations, they have the large income inequality, and if you are seeing here the less developed countries here. Um, uh, if the Gini coefficient value is higher, it means there are higher unequal income distribution. If the Gini coefficient is low, it means there is low income distribution. So here there is some concept of the Gini coefficient, and you can go through this point also.
What is Gini coefficient? Household incomes vary from one household to another. The Gini coefficient measures the spread of household incomes across all households. To understand the Gini coefficient, we start with the Lorentz curve. This curve shows the spread of household incomes plotted on a chart. Households are first organized according to their respective household incomes, from the lowest to the highest. A line is drawn through the points where the cumulative proportion of households is plotted against the corresponding cumulative proportion of income. This is the Lorentz curve. If every household has the same income, the Lorentz curve lies along the 45-degree line. This is known as the perfect equality line, where the household incomes of all households are equally distributed. However, if one household has all the income and others have zero income, the Lorentz curve is flat at the horizontal axis before it rises to 100%, where all the income is earned by one household. This is known as the perfect inequality line. How do we calculate the Gini coefficient using the Lorentz curve? Let us call the area between the perfect equality line and the Lorentz curve as area A, and the area under the Lorentz curve as area B. The Gini coefficient is calculated by taking area A divided by the sum of areas A and B. The Gini coefficient varies between the values of 0 and 1. The Gini coefficient is 0 when the Lorentz curve coincides with the perfect equality line, which reflects perfect equality. As the Lorentz curve moves further away from the perfect equality line, the Gini coefficient increases, reflecting greater uneven spread of household incomes and subsequently greater income inequality. The Gini coefficient is 1 when the Lorentz curve coincides with the perfect inequality line, which reflects perfect inequality. The Gini coefficient is used as a measure of income inequality by countries around the world. However, comparing income inequality across countries using Gini coefficients is not straightforward. This is because different countries may use different equivalent scales, household income definitions, and household coverage. What are equivalent scales? Equivalent scales are used to adjust household incomes, allowing us to compare and analyze households with different compositions and sizes. Equivalent scales take into account the needs of a household increase with each additional member, but not proportionally so. For instance, a household with one member uses 1 unit of electricity, but another household with 4 members may not necessarily use 4 times as much. There is a variety of equivalent scales, and different countries may use different scales. Examples of equivalent scales include the per household member scale, modified OECD scale, and the square root scale. To explain each of these scales, let us take the example of a household with 4 members, comprising of 2 adults and 2 children, with a total household income of $4,000. When using the per household member scale, the household equivalence value is the number of household members. The equivalized household income is calculated by dividing the total household income by the equivalence value of 4. The equivalized household income is thus $1,000. When using the modified OECD scale, the household equivalence value is calculated by assigning 1 point to the first adult, 0.5 points to each additional adult, and 0.3 points to each child. In our example, the household equivalence value is 2.1, giving us an equivalized household income of $1,905. When using the square root scale, the household equivalence value is the square root of the number of household members. In this example, the equivalence value is 2, is thus $2,000. Internationally, there is no standard equivalent scale recommended for general use. For more information on the Gini coefficient and the key household income trends in Singapore, visit www.singstat.gov.sg.
From here, you can only go through the values of the Gini coefficient, how we calculate the Gini coefficient by using the Lorentz curve formula. There are the trends of the Gini coefficient in case of Pakistan, and now from these trends, you can see how a disparities has been found, whether it is between 0 to 1. If it is near to 1, it is showing the more inequality. If it is near to 0, it is showing equality. It cannot be 0, it cannot be 1, obviously. So there are the values of the poorest 20%, middle 60%, and rich 20%. By using these values, you can also find out the uh, values, or you can easily find out. Uh, you can make actually the Lorentz curve. For further information, you can go through the site uh, of the Economic Survey of Pakistan or Ministry of Finance 2018 to 2019, and you can take the current values of the poverty of Pakistan, and you can go through how the poverty, or the what are the factors which are contributing to the poverty, and what measures has been taken by the government to reduce the poverty actually. In the next lecture, I will go through the other measures of the poverty. How would you find out the poverty and the different policies? We will go through about that. So thanks for your attention. I hope you will understand this lecture. If you find any question, any query, you can